to 200 200.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Yes! This is the Ross Kaminsky Show.
You're a great American.
Now, Ross Kaminsky.
Come on, man.
On Denver's talk station, 630 KHOW.
All right, good morning. It's Tuesday. I'm Ross. A little bit of snow coming down here around the radio station area, but nothing too crazy. Road seems all right. Anyway, it's great to be with you this morning. I always appreciate, especially the folks, these days with the whole COVID thing and more people working from home, I have the feeling that the audience has shifted slightly later. Like there might be more people listening in the 9 o'clock hour than there used to be and fewer in the 6. So I particularly love all my 6 a.m. listeners who are up early along with me. I've got my McDonald's half sweet, half unsweet iced tea here. I had a very healthy breakfast of a bacon, egg, and cheese McGriddle, but how do you say no when the app has a breakfast sandwich for $1? I mean, how do you say no to that? Sounds like free advertising for McDonald's, I suppose, but it's just because it's convenient and it's $1. What are you going to do? We have a lot to do today. We got a really excellent and hopefully fairly important show for you today, with some local politics and some international stuff that I hope you're going to find really interesting. An hour from now, State Senator Paul Lundeen, Republican from Monument, is going to join us to talk about what's coming up in this legislative session. We know there are a few gun laws that Democrats are proposing. There may be a new gas tax or something like it, gasoline tax, coming. We'll see. And there are, of course, the ever-present Democratic efforts to raise your taxes. I was thinking about this last night. This is a weird thing, but you probably have all heard, whether from biblical stories or Great Depression kind of stories, this idea of locusts that fly through in these swarms and eat everything they can find, and then they leave and the skies are blue again, but now you're starving because they've eaten everything. And what's a little bit incongruous for me as I think about 80 million people voting for Joe Biden and people in Denver voting for Candy Citabaca and Tay Anderson and all these crazy leftists, people who actually wear their membership pins to the Socialist or Social Democrat Party, being, elected to the board in Aurora. All these people actually who are being elected by the voters are people who I think of in the aggregate as a giant plague of locusts. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I mean, I realize it is kind of mean, but being mean isn't my point. My point is they come through and they destroy everything. And Joe Biden is already doing it. Keystone XL, right? Going back to the Paris Climate Accord. The Paris Climate Accord is nothing but a way to increase the cost of government, raise taxes, and redistribute money, not just within the United States, but to give money to take money from American taxpayers, from you and me, and give it to foreigners, not in the United States. I mean, they come through, they raise taxes, they raise the regulations on your business, they do something that they are pretending is good for you, like free paid family and medical leave. Well, not free because it comes with a huge tax, but paid family and medical leave that I think most people wouldn't want once they actually understood what it's going to involve. But of course, they keep people stupid and just make it sound like it's free or it's almost nothing or the rich people are going to pay for it. And they just fly through And suddenly your corn and your wheat are gone. And the problem is that your seed corn is gone too. And now you don't have the stuff to plant for next year's crop because, oh, look, the locusts ate all of that too. And in a way, I think that analogy is a little bit too good for the president of the Bad Analogy Club, because I think it's actually sort of a decent one. But it was just something that came to mind last night as I was thinking about what's going on around us politically and thinking about talking to Paul Lundeen today about what's coming up in the legislative session. And I liked that comparison just because it's so visual. You can picture these thousands of locusts flying together in their tight pack, sometimes a big enough pack that it appears to blot out the sky, and you feel like all hope is gone. And you hide for a while as best you can, and then you come out of your house, and the sky is blue, and you think, oh, I'm okay, and then you look down, and your crops are gone. Your crops that represented the way that you were going to feed your family and generate your income the next year, it's all gone. All these people who are talking about, how great Joe Biden has been so far. Look, I fully understand the idea that people might feel a little relief that Donald Trump is gone. I feel a little of that myself, but boy, do I feel more that Joe Biden and his crew and Democrats in the state legislature are destroying everything. And it's very hard for me to tell whether they know they're destroying everything, whether they've actually drunk their own Kool-Aid. But anyway, we'll see. It's just the beginning of the Biden administration, and we'll see what happens in this particular legislative session here in Colorado. But bottom line, though, is that people are voting for the locusts. For some reason, people have come to like locusts. Come on, locusts, come on in. You know what I think it is? Okay, here's what I think it is. As long as I'm going to stick with this analogy, I might as well make it a bad one and a complete one. I just thought of this, Shannon. Tell me what you think of it. Imagine that you are a farmer of relatively low moral character, such that you are absolutely willing to let other people get hurt if it means you make more. So, for example, let's say you and the farm next to you are each growing corn. I don't even know if locusts eat corn, but anyway, let's say you're each growing corn, and you realize if something bad were to happen to your neighbor's corn crop, there would be less supply of corn. So as long as your crop was okay, then you'd be able to sell your corn for an extra $1.50 a bushel. And by the way, the bushel is a fantastic unit of measurement, but an extra $1.50 a bushel and make more money for your family. Now, you don't have the courage of your convictions to go to destroy your neighbor's corn crop, either because you're not quite that bad a person, or because you are that bad a person, but you're just not courageous enough to act on it. So you don't go over and burn your neighbor's crop. Instead, what you do is you vote for a bunch of locusts, and you have the locusts come to destroy your neighbor's crop, thinking that somehow magically the locusts can destroy your neighbor's crop without destroying yours. But that's not how locusts work. Is this bad enough yet, Shannon? Getting there? My point is, I think a lot of people vote for Democrats, especially if you pay attention to liberal Twitter and see what they think about taxing the rich and how much they really hate successful people and how much they hate economic liberty and these incredibly bad and stupid ideas that they have that national debt doesn't matter. This is all over the place now. I think these folks vote for the locusts because they believe that they are that the locusts think of them as friends and that the locusts won't destroy their crop. They'll only destroy the crops of the other people. But again, that's not how locusts work. Once the locusts show up, they don't know who's the Republican farmer and who's the Democratic farmer. Right? Yes, Shannon?
I believe that if you invite the locust, vote for the locust, you're not so much worried about your neighbor's crop or yours. You want it all wiped out, especially if you're going to get an extra $600 a week.
There's that too. There's that too. Another section of the population. Let's wipe it all out, and the government will magically find corn for me from somewhere, even though I called the locusts in to eat all the corn. But they'll magically find some for me from some other place, and they'll give it to me for free. It's all bad. It's all locusts. And that's my analogy for the day, that I think we have stretched as far as we're going to stretch it for the moment, although I may come back to it later. But I just liked it because it was so visual. Saw a piece from the Associated Press yesterday, a story that we talked about briefly maybe a month ago or so, about a police stop in Aurora. You may recall the story, but I'll update you. Actually, this happened in August. It felt like just a month or two ago, but it was more like 4 months ago or 5. In August, where a woman was driving with 4 girls ranging in the age from 6 to 17. They were either just going to or coming from a day out with the family. I think maybe it was one of the girls' birthdays. The 6-year-old girl was wearing a tiara. It was a big party day. And for some reason, I guess the police checked the license plate of the vehicle. I don't know why they did. And it came up that license plate number represented a stolen vehicle. So they stopped the car and get everyone out of the car. They put the 17 and the 12-year-old on their stomachs on the pavement with their hands cuffed behind their back. The 14-year-old and the 6-year-old were also lying on the ground. I don't think they were cuffed. The cuffs were too big to fit the 6-year-old. And the 6-year-old's mother was the driver of the car. Her name was Brittany Gilliam, just out to have a nice day with her daughter and some other kids. And the Aurora Police Department pulled all these people out of the car and put them all face down on the ground, some of them handcuffed, some of them not. This was one of many fairly ugly stories about policing, some of which come out of Aurora, some of which are more obvious than others as massive wrongdoing. The death of Elijah McClain looks pretty bad. Final results of the investigation being done by Attorney General Weiser's office aren't in yet. This particular case, let's just say excluding cases in which people died, which feel sort of like a different category. This particular case strikes me as one of the most egregious failures of policing. And a lawsuit has been filed now against the officers, against the department, and against the chief. It's unclear how the chief is properly included as a defendant in the case. The lawsuit seeks, according to the Colorado Sun, which published the AP piece, unspecified monetary damages, disciplinary action against officers, written apologies, and changes against police policy and training. And you may ask, Ross, why does this seem like one of the most egregious stories of police failure that you've heard? Again, excluding cases in which people died. And the reason is that if the cops had done just the tiniest bit of work, as far as I can tell when I read the story back at the time, they would have found that the license plate number representing a stolen plate, which they used to detain and harass and traumatize these children, was not Colorado, but it was Montana. They stopped the Colorado plate with the same number. Not only was it a Montana plate rather than a Colorado one, the stolen vehicle in Montana was a freaking motorcycle, not a car, not an SUV. It was a motorcycle. So there was a stolen motorcycle in Montana that these incompetent people couldn't do like 1 minute of work to figure out that it wasn't a car in Colorado, and so they did this to these children. Handcuffed them on the ground. I do want to note, because some people are talking about the police reform bill that passed in Colorado, and they're talking about it as if the police officers in this case are likely to face personal liability because the law that passed does, in certain circumstances, allow that a police officer could end up having to pay 5% of the judgment up to $25,000 in person. In a form and police. Any other provision of law, a peace officer's employer shall indemnify its peace officers for any liability incurred by the police officer and for any judgment or settlement entered against the peace officer for claims arising pursuant to this section, except that if the peace officer's employer determines that the officer did not act upon a good faith and reasonable belief that the action was lawful, then the peace officer is personally liable and shall not be indemnified. Blah, 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 blah. So, as long as the police department